Hola, chicos y chicas. Welcome to your first screencast for Spanish 1. For clarification, screencasts are designed for students to pre-see a lesson in English before they see it in Spanish in the classroom. So the idea of a screencast is for students to have a tool, at home or a study hall that they can see what's going to be presented to them in English first, so that they have a prior understanding of what is to come as a lesson in the classroom. The biggest piece and idea about screencast in English for Spanish is to be able to keep the integrity of the program. That means that both the students and the teacher speak in Spanish in the classroom. And so the idea is that with this tool, students will be more in tune and aware of what's going on grammatically in the classroom, and will allow for the philosophy of the program to continue as it has been. So please take advantage of them, use them, ask questions, give us some feedback on them. So today, this is your first screencast. It is your first lesson in grammar in Spanish, and we're going to talk about definite and indefinite articles. Artículos definidos y artículos indefinidos. You may or may not know what these are in English, and you will at the end of the lesson. So first of all, before we actually get into articles, we need to talk about nouns. Okay, so nouns in Spanish and in English. So like in English, nouns or sustantivos in Spanish can either be singular, if there's only one, or they can be plural, if there are two or more. Now, unlike in English, nouns or sustantivos in Spanish, they have a gender. They can either be masculine or they can be feminine. And this is the biggest difference between nouns in Spanish and in English. They're alike because they can both be plural. They are unlike each other because in Spanish, nouns are either masculine or feminine. It's very important to take that into consideration. Now let's look at when nouns are either masculine or feminine, in Spanish. Now there is a general rule. It's not 100%, but the general rule works pretty well, so make sure that you're in tune with it. So as a general rule, nouns in Spanish ending with an O are generally masculine, like chico. El chico, el amigo, el apartamento. Now, all of these three words are masculinas, so the word is masculine. Amigo, chico, apartamento. And these are actually attached to their definite article, which we'll talk about today. Now, nouns ending in a are generally feminine nouns in Spanish. There are a few exceptions, and we'll talk about these as we run into them. There are also a few exceptions with nouns that end in O, and we'll talk about them as we run into them. The general rule is the most important, and the exceptions come as we move forward into the language. So here we go. We've got chica, amiga, casa. So we've got girl, friend, you've got house, and now you've got the la in front of all these, and that would actually be the definite feminine article, singular, for those words. And we'll continue to talk about this as we move forward. So, as a rule of thumb, we've got one more, Nouns in Spanish ending with e or a consonant, in Spanish, consonante, can be either masculine or feminine. So this can be a little bit tricky. So if the word ends in e, or if it ends in a consonant, now there's the option of the word either being masculine or feminine. So here, with the words ending in O and words ending in A, we can somewhat predict whether the word's going to be feminine or masculine. Here, it becomes a little bit more ambiguous. And this is where articles come in. Because of this, you'll need to pay attention to the article of the noun. It will always tell you what the gender of the word is. So, el profesor. Profesor ends in R. And you may not know that that would be a masculine noun. However, because el is in front of it, now you know that el profesor is a masculine noun. La conversación. if you just looked at conversación and you looked at the ending, which ends in N, you wouldn't know whether conversación was masculino or femenino. However, when you look at the la, which is the definite feminine singular article, it tells you that la conversación is a feminine noun. And we have the same thing with el lápiz, okay, the pencil. It ends in Z. You wouldn't know whether it was masculino or femenino, but because we have the el in front of it, we know that el lápiz is a masculine noun. And lastly, we have la clase. When you look at la clase and you look at it ends in the vowel e, you wouldn't know whether it was masculino or femenino. However, when you look at the article in front of it, la, now we know that la clase is a feminine noun. So, for these words that end in either e or in a consonant, you will need to memorize the article. And you remember that the article determines the gender of the noun. Always. So, because we can only predict and not be 100% sure whether a noun is masculino or femenino, we know that we can do a pretty good prediction if the noun ends in an O. We can do a pretty good prediction if the noun ends in A, but we're a little bit ambiguous if the noun ends in E or if it ends in a consonant. So, because of that, whether a noun is masculino or femenino, whether it's singular or plural, it will always be determined by its article. And this is known as el artículo in Spanish. Okay? And you have to understand that articles are part of the noun. Okay, so let's look at them. We've got artículos definidos, definite articles, y artículos indefinidos, indefinite articles. Well, what does definite and indefinite mean? ¿Qué significa definido versus indefinido? Well, we've got two types of articles. We've got the definite and the indefinite articles. Definite articles are articles which help to define or be more specific about the noun that they're referring to. They're simply more specific about the noun. And indefinite articles are the opposite. These are articles that are less specific about the noun they're referring to. So, you've got definite, you're more specific about the noun that you're referring to, and you've got indefinite, okay, you are less specific about the noun that you're referring to. And we'll see that in just a second. Okay, so let's look at artículos definidos and what they are. Here's your lovely table. Okay, so you've got artículos definidos, masculino singular, el. Masculino plural, los. Femenino singular, la. Femenino plural, las. And all these mean the in English. So let's look at artículos indefinidos, the ones that are not so specific. And here we've got masculino singular es un, masculino plural es unos, femenino singular es una, and femenino plural es unas. And these in English mean a or some. So let's look at the two nouns here, boy and girl. And here we're missing the article. Okay, so let's look at it with the article. Let's look at first at the definite article, which is much more specific. So we have el chico. Here's the singular masculine article for chico. El chico, the boy. There's your definite article in English. Okay, let's look at the definite article, feminine and plural. La chica, the girl in English. And now let's look at indefinite articles. They're a little bit less specific. So we've got un chico, a boy, versus una chica, a girl. Un is the indefinite singular masculine article for chico, and una is the feminine singular indefinite article for chica. And this is where you see the difference. The boy is a little bit more specific than just a boy. And the girl, she's just a little bit more special. She's just a little bit more, we're being a little bit more specific about the girl. than we are about just a girl. Okay, so let's take a little review of what we're talking about today. Okay, first things first. Nouns in Spanish can be either masculine or feminine. That's the biggest difference. Okay, we can make a prediction, and generally, nouns ending in O are going to be masculine, and nouns ending in A are going to be feminine. Okay, that's a pretty good prediction to make. Okay, now nouns ending in E or in a consonant, they can either be masculine or they can be feminine, and the article will determine this. Okay, and you have to remember those articles in those words. And articles in Spanish can be either masculine, they can be feminine, they can be singular, or they can be plural. And there's an agreement to that. So if the article is singular, the noun needs to be singular. If the article is plural, the noun needs to be plural. And we'll talk about plural articles a little bit later on in the year. And lastly, there are two types of articles. We have definite articles, which are more specific, and indefinite articles, which are less specific. And here's the terminology that you must know in Spanish, because this is the terminology that we will be talking about in the classroom. So we have a sustantivo, which is a noun. Artículo definido is your definite article. Artículo indefinido is your indefinite article. Singular and plural, those are cognates, those are conados. You should know what those are. Género is gender. And when you talk about gender, you've got masculino and femenino. Género masculino, género femenino. I hope this is helpful. Any questions? Let us know. Hasta la pasta.